In Sierra Leone, I remember Leonard and I'm like, I think this is why our model works, is because we collaborate with the community to come up with solutions together. We don't say, here's what you need to know. Now here's what you need to do. It's like, what do you know already? What can we do to build on that? And how can we help you to be more supportive of the people in your community already?
Welcome to Unlikely Gifts, a podcast for anyone looking for hope amid difficult circumstances. Life can be beautiful, unexpected, and at times profoundly difficult. It helps to hear from others who have grown from life's challenges and joys. That's why Leonard Mbonani and Cynthia Bauer are sharing how their experiences working with families impacted by disabilities in Africa have taught them about life's most amazing gifts and its hardest tragedies. These are Unlikely Gifts.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Unlikely Gifts. I'm Frank Boswell, and as always, I'm joined by Cynthia Bauer and Leonard Mbonani, the co-founders and directors of an organization called Kupenda for the children. Kupenda is a Swahili word for love, and the organization exists to replace harmful beliefs that surround disability with beliefs that will improve lives. Cindy and Leonard, welcome again. We've been talking about lots of topics over the last few months, grief and healing and love and patience and suffering. I think we talked about wisdom last time, but we wanted to address the issue of community and explore its role in the kind of work that Kupenda does. And as I thought about this, community is kind of a big idea, a big theme. It can mean a lot of things. It can mean an organizational community. It can mean the surrounding society. I think it's kind of a buzzy word. I mean, I hear a lot of people talk about the desire for community, and what they really want is warmth and safety and friendships and that sort of thing. So maybe the first thing I want to just toss out to you, what do we mean? What do you think we're talking about when we talk about community? What comes to your mind?
Thank you. My first definition of a community could be a group of people who are sharing the same characteristics. They could be having the same culture, beliefs. Yeah, that's how I could easily define a community.
That's good. That's good. Cindy, other thoughts?
Well, I think when I think of community, you think of people, people living together near each other, supporting one another, just connected to one another's lives and knowing what's happening with one another and having a shared life, I guess, on a daily basis.
Well, that's a really nice, succinct shared life on a daily basis.
Hmm.
Well, that could be a family, it could be an organization, it could be a town or a nation even. I mean, it's got a lot of different levels to it. I mean, there's a community, there's a school in Getty. Am I saying that right? That's a community. That's a community of people with disabilities. What's that community like?
Okay, I can see that's a small community, as you have said, children with disabilities staying in one place. But I could also expand that to include a group of people, let's say like the people with disabilities. They also form a community. Not only those are together, but even those in the society, because I believe society is wider than the community. So I tend to believe these people who are sharing a common condition like a disability, they also form a community on their own. So it will depend, as you have said, it could even be my family. We are as small as it is, but we are a community in that small size. And then it keeps on increasing, increasing. But when I look at the first question you have asked, what role does the community play? I want to say a community, particularly in relation to any program, say like Kohenza and Kupenda, the program we are having. Well, I want to believe that community has a very, very big role. For one, they are the recipients or they are the consumers, but at the same time, they are the actors and they are the people who can say, yes, this project will continue, or this project shall not continue. So the buy-in from our community is very important for any project. And again, it's the same community that even when you are doing the implementation, they really need their supports. You also need to engage them so that you do not bring in new ideas. Most of the ideas that you are bringing here should be coming from the community. And I want to believe when they are coming from the community, what will happen is at the end, the element of sustainability becomes very important, because when they support the program, they are the ones who came up with the ideas. Then I'm seeing, even at a time when the program maybe has come to an end in terms of funding, that community can now still continue with those activities. And that's where we are saying it brings about sustainability. So for me, a community plays a very big role in any project, including what we are doing as Kuhenza and Kupenda.
Cindy?
Yeah, I think that because my experience of working in Kenya and many other low-income countries now, seeing how people just come together and, people are taking care of one another's children and that kind of thing. I see that for the community, like they're good at supporting each other, except if a child has a disability. And that's because of the stigma that exists. And so what we're doing every day is we're changing community beliefs and attitudes around disability so that those kids then can plug into that existing community. And in the United States, the challenge we have is we live not all, but most of us live in isolated family units or just by themselves across the country. And there isn't that supportive community. And so when someone has a disability, especially a disability that requires the support of other people, it's very difficult to live in isolation if you can't live without the support of other people. But we don't have those natural communities. We sometimes work to build them, but it's not a natural thing, I think, in our country. And so I think it's essential to have community, especially when you have people with disabilities that need support from, I mean, we all need support on a daily basis, right, from one another. But I mean, I think I just heard the other day on the news that loneliness, and isolation actually ha poses a higher risk for people than heart problems or cancer. It's like
That's
one of the
epidemic.
Yeah, it's an epidemic, especially I think in the United States, and especially when you start to talk about the elderly, because if you get to be 70, you're probably
Speaking.
going to be disabled, right? And so when we talk about disability, we're usually referring to children, but we know disability covers all ages. And so if we don't have that community together, I don't think our work can work without community. Our entire model is based on a community structure that exists in places like Kenya. And unfortunately, I think Leonard and I had a lot of conversations when he was here with him and his daughter about how that's changing in Kenya. The community is actually not it's going in the Western direction sometimes, and we don't want
Uh-oh.
that. That's the thing we want to keep, right? And the
Yeah,
question becomes, how do you increase resources but not lose the community? Because suffering sometimes holds us together too. So a shared suffering, a shared poverty, a shared disability can bring people together. But if you change that, then what happens? And I think it's challenging to keep it.
yeah. I
Other,
just to add on what Cindy has said. If there's any bad thing that we have borrowed from the West, is how we have really destroyed our community in terms of that togetherness is not being there again, just because we are borrowing the Western culture, which truly has destroyed the togetherness of our communities. As much as we are saying today, we still have that togetherness. But when I try to compare it with those olden days when I was young, truly people lived as a community. People lived to share everything that they have, whether it's resources, whether it's a sorrow. It was a a collective responsibility. I can even remember if you have had a harvest and you have put it maybe in your house and then the house gets on fire, what the community will do, they'll bring a maize again to compensate what has already been destroyed by the fire. Today, that one is not there, and people have become so egocentric. But I want to believe community is the way to go because you stay together, you offer security to one another, you support one another in many, many ways. Now, when it comes to Kupenda and Kuhenza as an organization, why are we struggling with the stigma? Because I want to believe we are not the first people to work in the disability space. Many people have come, but they are always struggling with the stigma. This is because the community is part of the formation of the stigma. They are the ones who formed the stigma, and it was passed from one generation to another for many, many years when it comes to the negative perception that they have about disability. These were passed from one generation to another. So for us, the community is very key because these are the people who formed these perceptions or these beliefs that are negative about disability. We need to reach to the same people and involve them in changing these perceptions that have been built for many, many years. That's why we are saying the society or the community is very important in all the activities that Cohenza does. Without those people, we may not be able to change the stigma. So a community has a crucial role in whatever we are doing as Cohenza and Kupenda.
So on the one hand, we have these mega forces that are sort of pulling us apart and making us more individualistic. On the other hand, the lifeblood, I mean, the very heart of what Kupenda is about is community attitudes, and the communities of those with disabilities. I mean, it's not incidental or a luxury. It's oxygen. It's the main thing. Well, I'm trying to figure out where to start. I guess I was just curious. Uh, Again, I asked this earlier about the school there and community. Yet people with disabilities grown up in a society that has a stigma about that, and then they come into that community. What do they experience? What is that like? How does that work for them?
I can tell you a little bit. I think we've probably mentioned it before, but it's worth mentioning again. At some of the schools, so Getty School is one of 24 schools that we support kids to attend, just so people know.
Okay.
And it happened to be the first one where Kupenda started with 15 kids that we supported. But one of the things that you'll see is because there's kids that have mobility issues that are using wheelchairs, and then there are children in that same school that are deaf that can walk on their own just fine, they end up forming friendships with one another. And the really cool thing that we see happening because they live in community with one another, the children who are in wheelchairs learn sign language to communicate with their friends who are deaf, and their friends that are deaf will support their friends in wheelchairs to say help get their meals, or like if they need help with their wheelchair pushing on rough soil or something. So they end up just supporting one another. Because I think sometimes people think about disability, they think of people without disabilities helping people with disabilities, not thinking that the people with disabilities are supporting one another.
They
Yeah.
would know. They would know what it's like having a disability.
Yeah. And the kids
So,
that, I mean, we've had times where it's been really important where some of the kids have actually been able to interpret for the kids in the wheelchairs when there was like an assault case, for example. There was a
hmm.
young woman in a wheelchair who was able to interpret for her deaf friend who had been assaulted. And so it's one of those things that, yeah, they learn how to overcome the obstacles to be able to connect with one another. I even remember Leonard's youngest daughter. She learned sign language when she was very young because she's a talker, and she's like she couldn't handle someone not being able to communicate with her. She's like, I
Oh,
have
that's funny.
to.
Well, it sounds like
Yeah,
we have things to learn from them about
yeah.
Certainly.
community.
Gede Special is a very unique model. To me, I find it like a place where it's really preparing the students for full societal integration. I'm imagining here are two students. One, as Cindy has said, one is in a wheelchair, has speech, but is in a wheelchair. The other one is hearing impaired. Apart from helping one another, what happens if these people at the end of their course, they go back to their communities and they happen to be coming from the same society or the same area? You can imagine how they will be able to understand one another. It's very easy for these people to communicate. They understand each other's disability. And hopefully one day these are going to be parents. Can you imagine if they are parents and their children go to one school? Who knows? They could be board members in those schools, but one could interpret for the other person. And I feel such institutions are really preparing the students for societal integration. And my observation has been we have we have special schools for maybe a single disability, let's say Kakuyuni Special School for the Deaf, compared to get a special school which has two disabilities. The one which really attracts people who want to come and know more is always the school which has a combination of disabilities. So you'll find that more people are interested in learning, or even supporting get a special school than supporting maybe a school for the deaf students. So it's a model that people are also learning. They can now see what is happening between the two types of disabilities. And this is a reference. And I think even the Kenyan government appreciates such a type of togetherness of two disabilities.
Are there things that you do to foster or facilitate that community, or does it just sort of spontaneously combust on its own?
Leonard, I think one of the areas that maybe we foster, I don't know if this would come to mind for you or not, because you just, they get so accustomed to things.
Yeah.
But one of them is the parent support groups that we guide people to develop. So, like, as an outcome of our work, so we work with pastors and other leaders to come together, and then they educate families on disability and helping them understand the disabilities of their children. And then we support them to go into what we call parent support or caretaker support groups. So groups of like 10 to 20 families that come together that all have children with disabilities and connect with one another. And we've seen amazing results from parents being part of those groups. We've had mothers that have said, I was suicidal before because the community was telling me that there was one woman who had two children with microcephaly and her husband had left her, which is happens more often than it should. And she said that the community was saying, well, why do you even support these two boys? You should just, kill them or put them in an institution or something. And no one talked to her. She was all alone. And she said she was thinking of taking her own life. But she said, but when she got connected to a parent support group, she said now not only are they coming together and supporting one another and supporting one another's children and people who can understand what you've been going through, they're learning to advocate for other families in the communities around them. And now she says the very people who once told me that I should kill my children are now trying to help take care of them so that I can go to work. And so without the support of the community, who knows where she would be today? And having people, like we said at the beginning, having that like-minded and experience of disability has been life-changing. I'm sure, Leonard, you have even more stories of parents like that.
Yeah, but we have also found is when we brought in the idea of livelihoods. You see, every person being a mother of a child with a disability, you have to contribute to the society. But here's a mother who has no job, who is held up to take care of the child. But for those we have empowered, you see them now, they are part and parcel of the society. When there is a small contribution to be given by mothers towards a certain problem within the community, even this mother who has now got an income generating project is able to contribute and she feels to be part and she's welcomed by the entire society.
What is it that changes the attitudes of those people that were formerly negative or resistant?
There's a few things. So as we've talked about before, we have a 1 day workshop model where we talk to people about what is disability, what their beliefs are, try to change that belief system around curses. But one of the
And
most
who are these people? Who comes to these workshops
so
and why
we
do they
have a
come?
workshop specifically for pastors. Usually we have about 25 pastors at one workshop to talk about the theology of disability, of what does the Bible say about disability beyond what they have been focusing on, which is often magical healing of every person with a disability, saying that if you have enough faith, then of course you won't have a disability anymore. And so we say the Bible actually says other things. It also, if you look, there's people in the Bible who have disabilities, like Mephibosheth or Moses, even, and they weren't healed from those disabilities. And then we share about the parable of the great banquet, which says, go into the streets and alleys and country roads and bring in the poor, the deaf, the lame, and then my house will be full. So we talk about those things, but one of the more important things is so we also will have a group of government leaders where we talk about legislation and laws. We'll have a group of traditional healers, which are people who practice like herbal medicines and sometimes get confused with, say, witch doctors, which they're not technically, but a lot of their interventions can be harmful and not helpful. Um, and so we talk about like what are things that really help people, more of the biology part. But the most important thing that's in every workshop, regardless of the community leader type, is we have someone with a disability that shares their story. And in reports from these leaders, they'll tell us that was one of the most impactful part of the whole workshop because it's one thing to talk about disability as an issue. It's another thing to talk about disability as a human being. And so they're hearing from a
Hmm.
person. It humanizes the challenge. And I think that's why if we work, as Leonard was saying, as we work more and more with youth with and without disabilities, kids naturally like come together. And one of the things, like that wall that was built at the Getty Special School was built by the adults and the administration. And they're like, they put a wall between us. We were playing together before, and then they put a wall for whatever reason. Leonard could explain that more. But kids, if we can just, the earlier kids are around kids that are different from them, and the more they learn how to interact, the better they'll be as adults. The problem in our society, and I know it was even worse in my mom and your generation, Frank, my mom's like, I never saw people with disabilities because they were just like hidden away. You didn't even know they existed. And I think that now we have more as time goes on, we hopefully will have more people with disabilities who are your doctors and your teachers, not just people who are public speakers or just not just people you're helping, but people who are just in your regular life on a day-to-day basis. And that's where stigma
Right.
gets reduced too.
And how do the pastors and these government leaders respond to the teaching in the workshops? Are they pretty receptive to that? Is it a struggle for them to shift their paradigms or what?
Well, I'll start with the pastors. Indeed, because our approach is not to condemn anybody, and neither are we saying we are the experts. It's always a discussion. And we are discussing from the Bible as our reference, which is something that the pastors are very familiar with. So my
Hmm.
experience interacting with the pastors when we are doing a workshop, they'll end up saying, hey, Leonard, are you a pastor? Because what we are all trying to tell them to discuss is coming from the Bible. So in many times, there has never been such big conflicts when we are discussing that. And should there be a hot discussion, we are always taking it back to the people themselves, the participants. And out of that group, there must be one or two people who did maybe advanced theology. They will be able to respond and they will be able to respond to their questions. And in the long run, you find that they are saying, okay, this is the right way to go. So pastors are very supportive, very understanding, and from our experience, even we have never had a day where we have called a pastor's workshop and get less than 80% in attendance.
And
And in
government officials, how do they feel about pulling out the Bible and stuff? They,
Well, we don't do that in the
oh, okay.
government meetings. So in the government meetings, instead of the Bible, we actually use the law and the Disability Act and say, this is
Oh,
the thing
okay.
you say you follow. Like, did you know
Right.
it says this? So it's a similar idea, except we're talking
Sure.
about legislation instead.
I think the key point for us and how we get hold of these pastors and the government leaders, even when it comes to the government leaders, we don't stand there to share our experience, but we have some references like the laws and the policies. And when you are discussing these things and they are taking the lead, they feel like, yes, this is the policies that we should be knowing and be implementing as government leaders. So it's like you are there to remind them something that is already documented is for them to make sure that they are implementing. So they will feel like, oh, you come to remind us of our role as government leaders. And that is where now they feel like, okay, this is what Cohenza has told us. This is part of our role. And we got energized to continue with this work.
And I think of every workshop that we do ends with an action plan that the individuals create based on region. Again, they already have that community structure, which is why we can do that. And so they create these actions like this is what we're going to do after this workshop in terms of reaching out to families affected by disability and so on. But the thing that I thought was such an interesting reaction is we did a traditional healer workshop in the middle of nowhere under a tent in the home of a traditional healer. And there was someone that was from an organization supported by the UK government that was funding a project to look at the effectiveness of our workshops.
Mm.
And this guy who was American was there observing the traditional healer workshop. And at the end, they present their action plans to the whole group and people can ask questions. And this guy stood up and he asked a question to one of the traditional healers because after just one day, they're all of a sudden going to do all this stuff to support people with disabilities in their community. And he's like, why are you doing this? He's like, why are you committing to all of this? And the woman said, because this is our community and it is our responsibility to take care of
Oh,
them. And it's because of the natural community that already existed that they had that because I always say like the leaders we work with they're already activists in their communities and we're just kind of helping to make sure that their activism includes children with disabilities and those families. They just have that energy already and I just love that response like this is our community and it's our responsibility to take care of them because we don't pay them to do it. It's just helping them to do their jobs better. The same with pastors. We've had pastors stand up with tears just coming down their eyes saying, this is a community we've forgotten. And it is our responsibility as the church to make sure that they're included. And like, we
the
thank you for
community,
reminding us.
the community isn't just a goal, but it's the source of what
Mm-hmm.
you're doing, and it feeds
That's
on
a good way
itself
to
in
say.
some ways. That's so
Mm-hmm.
interesting. Well, now there we talked about the community and people with disabilities and the surrounding community, government people, pastoral religious people. What about Kupenda as an organization? Is community life a part of what makes you effective?
Oh, thank you so much for this question. Little did I look at it from that perspective, but we are truly a community too. I'm seeing us to be over 30 people, and a majority always meet together. We have a morning devotion, and we do things together. We care for one another. Should one be sick, we are already out there to support. Should one be having a wedding or maybe of a son or a daughter, we are always there. So we are living as a community, and it's a very, very supportive community.
Mm.
Above all, even when it comes to the work we are doing, this is work that cannot be done by one person. You need the other people to support you. But because of staying as a community, understanding one another and supporting one another, each one takes his or her role that feeds into the mission of the organization. And even very interesting, we do take our meals together. So you'll find during lunch hour, we are all at the canteen, we are taking lunch together. There's a lot of talking to one another, and that really brings us together, and you get to understand one another beyond the work we are doing.
I can't imagine fostering good communities if you didn't have one to begin with. And you've just described a beautiful sense of team and community. You listen, you look like you're having fun. You just lit
Oh,
up. Sound like you're
yeah,
enjoying that.
it's really fun today. Just like today, I was not feeling very well in the morning, and I said, "Oh, let me get some time to rest." But I felt like, hey, there's something I'm missing. I'm missing my colleagues. I'm missing interacting with the people that I work with. So I could even have joined this Zoom meeting through from my house. But because I really want that interaction with my people, I decided to come all the way here to come and have this Zoom meeting. But I'm sure even when I was coming in, I had to say hi. How are you? How has been the day? And I really love that.
I remember reading a study about why people stay with their jobs, and it wasn't money, it wasn't prestige, it was relationships. That was the most important factor. In any, you could do a job you didn't like, but if you like the people, you want to stay. So it's so important. Well, what are there particular, I don't know quite what I'm asking, are there particular dangers, threats, barriers? What gets in the way of what you're trying to do? What is the biggest thorn that you have to deal with?
I mean, our biggest challenge, I think, Leonard, I think you'll agree, is the stigma around disability that continues to persist. I mean, we only just a few years ago had a young man who had was paralyzed from the waist down, and his father was stoned to death by the community because they
Mm.
blamed him for they blamed him for his son's condition, but when another child with a disability um, was born in the community, they say, see, that's proof that he's a witch. And this man was a very kind, supportive, wonderful father. And yet the community came together. So they had a joint belief about the witchcraft they thought he was practicing. And that was something in a community we'd worked a lot in. And so that's really hard for us to see like some of those things still pop up.
That's horrifying.
It is
That,
very
that's
bad,
hard for
yes.
me to put my head around.
Hmm.
I think this is because we are talking of beliefs, and beliefs, it's not something that can be removed maybe in one workshop or even two workshops. It takes time for you to change your beliefs, to change the belief systems. But I want also to say that as a community, working in the community, you also need to have a listening ear to the community.
Mm.
Let us not assume that whatever we do 100% is correct. Can we listen to the community and hear what they say about us, what they say about the organization? There are some things that may really hold a lot of water. And when you hear that, you need to address it and say, yes, this is true. Something is not right here, and we have to address it. And I think this is why in AYA we have a group of community leaders that we bring to our center just to hear them say about our program. What is it that is going right? And what is it that is not going right? And what advice do you have so that we can correct what is not right? Some may think that as an organization within this community, you are supposed to be serving all the people. But if they come and you explain them that, yes, we wish we could serve all the people, but this is the only group of people that we are serving. When they understand that, then that relationship is always being built and also responding to some of their concerns that are related to the organization. When you respond to that, you are getting that confidence from the community. So there are still a few challenges that organization need to be very sensitive, need to have a listening ear so that they can get to understand what is happening. Even when somebody does something very wrong about the organization, maybe he says something badly, we don't approach it with that hostility. We have to approach it with a sober mind, get to understand what had made him to say that, and then try to address it, talk to him. By the time he understands the truth, he has become an agent of the organization in the community.
Well, that's going to take some humility. I mean, people aren't usually open to correction. Well, you want them to be open to correction, but you're doing it first. That's kind of what I'm hearing. You're willing to listen to them and adopt a learning attitude.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think there's a great way. I think I might have mentioned this before, but I think that a great way to explain how even we're able to be effective in the community is like when Leonard and I were in Sierra Leone and we met with an organization that was wanting to actually reach out to traditional healers. They'd been working with pastors, but they wanted to try traditional healers, which is a lot. Some people are scared to do that. And the pastor who was the one doing it said, well, when we come to the traditional healers and we tell them that what they're doing is wrong, they don't want to listen to us. And Leonard and I are like, well, that's partly maybe why it's not being effective. Like you don't
Mhm.
come to someone and just start telling them that they're wrong. First you want to know like why do you do the things that you do? Help me understand instead of coming with a condemning attitude. Like a lot of things come down to misunderstanding, miscommunication, lack of information. And so instead of judging the people who mostly there are some anyone, whether it's a faith healer in the church or a traditional healer trying to make money, there's not much you can do with those people because
Mhm.
their reasons for doing the things are not to help the community, but the majority want to do what's right. And so we want to help them to do that. And so in Sierra Leone, I remember Leonard and I'm like, I think this is why our model works, is because we collaborate with the community to come up with solutions together. We don't say, here's what you need to know. Now here's what you need to do. It's like, what do you know already? What can we do to build on that? And how can we help you to be more supportive of the people in your community already? Fortunately, in the countries that we work in, we don't really have to form communities because they exist. Now, I have actually, my disability experience at a larger scale is mostly in African countries. Like, I wasn't part of a community of people with disabilities or anything in the United States or any of that. And so I've actually been asked to teach at churches and other groups about disability. And I use my experiences in Kenya and other countries like Kenya to help them learn in America how we can do better around disability inclusion. Because living and it's harder in one sense in that we don't have the community. Because I think a lot of people think, especially like the old school missionary mindset was like, oh, we need to go help them, as opposed to like we can help one another in a global sense of community. It's like it's not just us. Like Leonard comes here and he's like, why do you live alone? That doesn't make it like, what are you doing?
What's wrong
Why
with
don't I
you?
see any people walking around? Your neighbor could die and you wouldn't even know it. Like it's all, and he's like, this is terrible. I'm like, it is terrible. It's
Well,
true.
well, I was going to, one of the things that fascinates me about you guys is what different worlds you've come from and the amazing way that God has kind of brought you together. What is there anything to be said about the cross-cultural dynamics? You're coming from North America, Cindy, Leonard, you're from Kenya and Africa, and here you are working to do this. Are there dynamics between those different cultures that play into this at all, or is there anything to be said about that?
Let me go first before Cindy can say. I think what has been happening for the many years that I've been working with Cindy, we've been learning a lot of cultures from one another. Yes, she comes from a different culture, and I come from a different culture, but we are also learning from each other. And above all, we have been very accommodative. Yes, I do go to the US and see some things that are really shocking me, as she also comes to Kenya and sees some things that are not very good for her. But we are accommodative. We understand we are working from different cultures, and being accommodative is very important. And again, we are also getting assimilated because I can imagine there are some things that Cindy may find from me and they may look odd. But because she's in Kenya and she has to stay with me, she has to be understanding and accept the way I also have to accept some of the cultures from the West. And I think Yeah, it has given me a better understanding because I'm sure here is Cindy, but tomorrow I'm having someone else from the West country, and it has given me a better understanding of how do I handle this person? What is it that will have, I will do that he will not be appreciating. So it's something that has really taught me a lot to interact with the different people. I want to believe even if I'm taken to another country, apart from Africa, apart from America, but still that experience interacting with the Cindy and the rest from the West, I think I can really fit in many cultures.
Well, and I'm not just from America. I'm from New England. So I think it's
Sorry.
it's
Oh,
also
I like
you still live there. Okay.
yes, exactly. So like New England's temperature, it's not only that our temperatures are cold, also that can translate into the culture as well. So if you
Mm.
were to be in some parts of the South or more rural areas, there's maybe more community than some places, but New England especially, people don't tend to talk to strangers and that kind of thing. And so like I know like when I've been in African countries, like people will just come and just read over my shoulder while I'm on my computer. And I'm like, what is happening? Or there's a giant bench and there's only me on the bench, and someone will come and sit right next to me.
Oh
Like
yeah.
the person else, I'm like, what is happening? So there's definitely parts of that I'm like, I don't, because at the end of the day, we're still American. And Leonard will say the opposite. He's like, I'm sitting on a plane or a train and no one talks to you. And I'm like, that's nice, isn't it? And he's like, I prefer, like, if you get on a plane, you got to be careful who's sitting next to you. Because if you start talking to them on an 8 hour flight, you might be stuck in
They may
conversation
never leave you
for the
alone.
next 8 hours.
Do you know,
No.
Unless you know, yeah. Yeah.
that reminds me, yesterday when I went to see the doctor in Watamu, I was sitting all alone waiting for my time to come and see the doctor. Then there was a white lady who came and sat next to me, and she was very busy on her phone. And it took me like another 15 minutes before I was called into the doctor. So I couldn't tolerate sitting next to someone whom I'm not talking to. So I just said, hey, I decided to greet her because she was very
Oh,
busy with her phone. I said, can I greet you? Because I know you are very busy with your phone, but I feel we need to exchange greetings. So she laughed first and they said, oh, yeah, this is the African way. Are you sure? I'm sorry. I should have said hi before I here before I even continued with my looking at my phone. So for us, if you don't greet someone, one, it's like you are not sure whether you are safe. Because if you are coming from one direction and I'm coming from the other direction, even if it's in the night, but I say hi, hi, that gives me security that he is a human being and he is not thinking bad about me. But if you just pass without even saying hi, what happens in the human mind? You always look behind to make sure that am I safe with this guy whom I'm giving away? So to us, it's very important to share greetings, to sit next to one another. And finally, the danger is we could sit in the same bus, just next, sharing the seat. And we may not be talking, but should an accident happen, that's the time I realize that I have a colleague here because I might even grab you just for security purposes. Why am I doing that? In the first instance, I was not even saying hi to you.
well, it is all about people. It's all about relationships. And your very organization is the Swahili word for love, which, the Bible, love is patient, love's kind, love is thinking of the other person, love adopts a servant attitude. And you just described all of that. But I've got to tell you, as I've gotten to know you and listened to you, uh, there's a real community that I see between the two of you, and that you have said extends to others in the organization. And I'm sure a lot of that love is what flows through you to the surrounding community. If you want to change the world, it really is kind of one person at a time. And I'm grateful for everything that you've shared. This is a really unique and exciting work that you do. So thank you for sharing it with us. And thank you for all of you who have tuned in to listen to this podcast. We hope you found this episode of An Unlikely Gift to be a source of hope as you walk through the challenges and joys of life. If you'd like to be a part of the meaningful work that Kupenda is doing, visit the website at www.kupenda.org. Kupenda is spelled Kupenda. And thanks for listening. We hope you'll join us next time as we explore the topic of joy.